fundamentals to get started. So we have beaten you to death on why podcasts are awesome, and we've defined what they are. So you're like, great, Will, stop talking. Tell me how I can get started. Give me that A to Z roadmap. So the first thing you got to do is figure out, is your podcast going to be personal, professional, or a hybrid? That's the first thing. What do I want to do? And you can make money and be successful with all of them. But really the difference, honestly, is how much money you put into it and how much money you should put into it. If it's personal, you probably don't need to put in that much, honestly. You can do it on a shoestring budget. If you're a business and you want to be professional, you're going to have to put a decent amount of money in it, and it's going to pay off. But after you got that figured out, an idea for a show. What is your podcast going to be about? Are you going to be like a true crime podcast, like a My Favorite Murder? Are you going to be a finance podcast, like something the New York Times does? Are you going to be a interview podcast, like Joe Rogan does? Are you going to be a wrestling podcast, like Kings of Rings podcast? Are you going to be a Talking with Tarashuk podcast, which is a variety show? It's a mixed bag, but it's a podcast. So figure that out. Who is your audience? Who are you targeting? Who do you want to listen to your podcast? That's something I kind of wish I figured out a while ago because I didn't really know. I just kind of want to throw it out there and see what happens. Is your podcast going to be a hobby where you just kind of do it periodically and it's fun and you build a little community? You got a Discord server and it's, you meet some cool people. Or is it a tool for your business? Are you that realtor? Are you that mechanic? Are you that chef? Are you that life insurance person? Because even if you're selling life insurance, right? This because you're selling life insurance doesn't mean your podcast has to be about life insurance. You could be a giant baseball fan and hate the Yankees. You could do a podcast saying how much you wish the Yankees would die and they wish they bought your life insurance. There you go. What kind of show is it? I can't believe I made that connection together, Christian. You believe that? What kind of show is it? I swear, guys, this isn't scripted at all. What kind of show is it? Is it an interview show? Right? Do you want to do one-on-one interviews like I do? Or like Rogan does, or like most people do. It's probably the second easiest kind of podcast to do because you sit down, you ask people questions. Cool. It's fun. If you do an interview show, is it going to be in person? Is it going to be remote? If you do it in person, what's that going to look like? Are you going to want to be in a studio and ante up all that cash? Or are you going to be like, listen, we can do it in my garage. Might be a little echoey, or we can do it in my basement, which is it's on the ground. It's a little better for sound. Again, personal, professional. Personal's going to have one alley. Professional's going to be another alley. Or are you going to do it remotely? Are you going to do it on Zoom? You could do it on Zoom.
And both lanes are viable.
Both lanes are totally viable. Right? Like I said, we're getting into equipment, I think, in the next few episodes. And there's going to be plenty of options for what you want to do professionally or personally. So we'll get into that in detail later. Is your podcast going to be a narrative? Is it going to be story-driven? Those are more rare, but those are definitely the future. Like Christian, you have a client in here doing an audiobook.
Yes. And she actually brought up, I forgot, they're not calling them podcasts, but essentially it's a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Like true crime stories where there's a story being told, like watching the Crime Channel kind of thing, but just audio.
What's the difference?
And there's sound effects, it's kind of like a movie without the visuals.
Exactly. What's the difference between a audiobook and a podcast?
It's read from a novel. That's you're saying is something else?
Put that camera on me. That the difference between an audiobook and a podcast is the paywall. That's it. Maybe ads. It's just how you make money. The difference between an audiobook and a podcast is how you make money.
You're saying that it's that audiobooks are monetized.
Yeah, it's behind a paywall. It's on a Kindle. What's the
Audible.
Right? You sell it, right? It's kind of like a publisher, but how do you publish an audiobook? Well, you kind of got to go to a recording studio and just publish it.
Well, you go to a recording studio, you record it, and then you
put it out there.
You put it out there, and there's a price with it. You have to.
Exactly.
I think you have to be a publisher to do that. But yeah.
Yeah. What a podcast? They're free.
They're free.
And a narrative podcast is essentially it's an audiobook. There's the sound effects, there's music. You can hire voice actors, right? It still fits the theme of a podcast. You can make it free and throw ads in and do all the same marketing you would do. You could put it on an RSS feed and get the benefits of an RSS feed over a publisher, right? You can totally do that. Narrative-based podcasts.
There's no middleman.
There is no middleman. No. It's all you, baby. It's all you. Good luck.
I heard a hit on Austin Powers there.
Yeah. Baby. I love doing that like baby. I do it all the time. Is your podcast discussion based? You know, it's two dudes sitting in a room talking. Not really scripted. The questions are there for guidelines more than anything. You know, that's how I do my podcasts. Discussion based is more of my friends and family. You know, like Rick, when I had my cousin Michael in, or my other cousin Christopher, or my friend Zach, or my friend Ricky. Yeah, we had the questions, kind of have a gimmick, but it's discussion based. We just kind of sit down and talk like I've known them for years, because I have known them for years. I don't need a plot, an outline, right? Is your podcast going to be business or product based? You know, your podcast could be all about skincare and your skincare routines because you're selling a skincare product. There you go, podcast. Is it a one-time goal? Meaning it has a beginning and an end. That can be an audiobook. That can be, you know, once that realtor, that house sells, you take down the podcast because it's already sold. You know, you can leave, you could leave it up, but you could just put you could just edit the title, be sold. If they won't go back and listen to it, they could listen to it. They really want to.
I mean, there are entire shows based off houses, you know, being sold.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, this house was sold. People go, oh, well, why was it sold? And they tell you about all the beautiful things about the house, what the person was looking for. You know, it's limitless.
It is. But yeah, like a one-time goal podcast is it has a beginning, it has an end. It could be one episode.
And we like that.
Yeah.
As people, we like that.
Yeah.
We like to have that closure, beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah. It's storytelling. Storytelling 101. But even like this podcast series is a one-time podcast. It's going to be 10 to 15 episodes, maybe a little more. And after that, it's done. It's going to have video accompanying it, but once it's done, it's done. Never doing it again, I promise. But the main thing, again, is it personal or is it professional? That's one of the most important things you got to figure out for your podcast. Because it's personal, you can cut corners, not cut corners, but financially cut corners and prep cut corners. Professional, if you don't go all the way, you're not going to go anywhere. Another thing to consider, what personal experiences or professional experiences do you have that can add value? And what makes it personal to you? Because if you're talking about something you don't care about, it's going to come across, it's going to be obvious, and it's going to be fucking terrible. I put one F word in there.
Yeah, I was wondering if we were doing that.
Yeah, well, I just put one for emphasis. Sorry, everybody. And then other than that, you got to figure out who's going to host. We have a co-host. Will you have guests? You know, all that kind of stuff, which we will go in depth in later episodes. This is an introductory course. It's probably gone about 40 minutes, so enjoy the clips, or thank you for making it this far.